Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and it's time for the first of our draft countdown shows. Always a big time of year for me. Joining me for the first one, talk about the tight ends today, is Alec Pulianas. Alec, how you doing?
Doing well, Ken. I don't know about you, but as I scouted these tight ends, sometimes I was like, oh, maybe I should watch a little bit more about this one player. I'll watch another guy instead. And I was like, oh, he's pretty good. I should put him on the list. And then, just keep going. And it's a very, very deep class. The rumors are true. And excited to talk about it with you. I think for sure, at least one of these people we talk about today will be a Raven in a few months.
Lot of flawed players here. Lots of little problems with players. Lots of bigger problems with some other players. And you got size limitations. You got inability to hold on to the football. You got all sorts of different problems, but generally a very good class. And the day three players extremely deep. I agree with you, and it is a little difficult to end up with the back end of the top 10. There's definitely some players who I think are over projected in this group, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm sure we'll talk about some of them. But let's start with your number 10 guy that we always do. Actually, no, we need to talk about the Ravens situation first. I always forget that. So Mark Andrews back for 2 more years, likely. That's the way that his contract is structured. And I know a lot of people have looked on OTC and seen a large savings from the second year. There was actually a component of his 2027 salary, which is already kicked in and effectively guaranteed his contract for that second year. So he's here for 2 years. That's the nature of that deal. Likely Kolar, Ricard, all gone, of course. In fact, Declan Doyle mentioned that they're trying to phase out the fullback. I'm interested to know what you think that means. Whether it means they're going to get rid of the fullback, or the tight end lines up in the backfield, or they'll have somebody else for the 12 short yardage plays per season, or the 35 short yardage plays per season they need them for, as opposed to having a 350 snap Patrick Ricard in the lineup.
Well, if you take a look at what the Bears did, they definitely used like an H-back, tight end as a fullback situation. So I don't fully buy that they're getting rid of the fullback. I think what they really mean by that, and not to say that we didn't see this for Ricard, is I think they want to have a player who starts, in line and then comes out of the alignment and into a fullback position, and maybe doesn't start there at the beginning of the formation. A little bit more movement skills, a little bit more of a pass catcher. I think they're just looking for a lighter body in that role, is my expectation.
It could be, and they certainly, lighter than Ricard is pretty much every tight end. Truly. one of the largest men ever to have a reception in the NFL. But if you look at the guy they picked up recently, Durham Smythe, a blocking tight end, very poor receiving career stats. He only broken 1 tackle in his entire career, 142 catches. He's broken 1 tackle. That's kind of a funny thing. He's positional depth. I don't honestly believe he's a surety in any way to make the team, but I haven't seen his contract structure definitively to know what his guaranteed money looks like. And if he's got $50,000 in guaranteed money, that sounds like maybe, okay, come on to camp. You'll get something for that. But if he's got $25,000 of guaranteed money or 0, then he's definitely not a sure thing to make the team. So we'll see how that works out.
I definitely don't think he should block you from making a draft day selection that you covet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a short-term deal no matter what. Your draft pick would be much longer prospect. And I think they did that just to, bolster a room that only had one person. I feel like if they make another move for the tight end, it could be after the draft as far as free agency goes. But I think they want to let themselves, maybe scoop up a few of these guys in the 5th round, have the second one bust out, things of that nature. But I definitely think I have no reason to believe that guy's going to block any of these tight ends. I think you could go to 16, 17 on my list, and I would say he should make the team over.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Looking at my list, 16 certainly, 17 probably. I mean, for one thing, all the guys down on day 3, they're cheap talent. I mean, Smythe is also cheap, but he's market value for each year. If there's ever any kind of, if he ever does anything really good for you, you might have to pay him more. And he's old, so it's unlikely that he's going to develop at anything more than what he is right now. And he'll most certainly be less than what he's been to date in his career, given the fact he's 31 years old or whatever. The David Njoku thing, I don't really believe that makes any sense at all for this team. He's at 5.5 yards per target the last 2 years combined. It's not all the Cleveland quarterbacks. Part of it's him, and that's just not a good thing. In fact, he should get probably more and possibly more marginal value targets out of being in on a team with weak other receiving options and maybe a weak quarterback. But it certainly hasn't worked out in terms of any positive numbers for him.
I'd rather have had Kohler.
Yeah, by far. And I'm not sure Njoku would be that expensive. I mean, he might be 2 years, $6 million or something like that. I'm still not excited. I mean, I'd rather take the chance. It's like you've got a 5 of diamonds or something, and you're trying to decide if you discard this and draw again from the pile, kind of thing. I'm drawing again from the pile.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. Definitely feels similar. I think I'm a little higher on him than you are, but I agree that I don't know. I feel like he'd be just a weird guy to have in a Ravens uniform. Not just because he comes from Cleveland. I don't fully see it. I don't fully understand his role. Sometimes you look at these players and you say, okay, I have a role for you. I know what I want to do with you. I don't really have that for Njoku, given the landscape of having a guy like Mark Andrews.
All right. You mentioned there are only those 2 tight ends currently, Smythe and Andrews, on the 90-man roster. So very much under construction. I'd expect by camp time, they'd probably have 5 tight ends on the roster. And that would go down to either 4 or 3 for the season. My guess is if you're going to try and keep a reasonable tight end room during the season, you probably want 4 on the roster if you're going to use some 13 personnel, and you might have another one on the practice squad still after that. So you might keep 5 during the season, with 4 being on the roster and 1, like I said, on the practice squad.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Long history of 2 selections of double dipping at the tight end position, having the second guy be better. Obviously, it's happened multiple times, including with Mark Andrews, probably most significantly, Isaiah Likely, most otherwise significantly, in terms of players there. Crockett Gilmore was in who was the guy? I want to say he's Matt somebody, but I've forgotten his name now. And he was the highly coveted one.
Was it Max Williams or something?
Max Williams. That's it.
Yeah.
So there, I'm not sure there's a lot of differentiation, but let's go ahead and jump right in at number 10. So we won't do honorable mentions until maybe the start of the second show. We can talk about some before we get to our top guys. But who do you have at number 10?
All right, I double checked the list. We got 10 here. No, so I just want to make sure my number was right. So Jake Enries of Texas, 6'5", 245 pounds, ran a 4.62. So Gunnar Helm was at Texas last year. I feel like they have a similar profile. It was like a nice little substitution. Probably goes in a similar part of the draft. What I really liked about him is that I saw the H-back role. They used him in that role. I thought he was productive in it. Solid run blocking and also pass blocking. I think one of the best games you could have watched for him to see, all parts of his film would be Ohio State game. But yeah, I think he was a nothing dominant player, but I thought he was a solid all around talent, which I think is kind of what I'm hoping for the Ravens here. I'm hoping I struggled mightily with ranking blocking and catching. I think this year I'm leaning more towards blocking than I ever have before. And I think that's a byproduct of how the NFL is going. And also just, what are you doing for me, tight end? In my opinion, my head, I always used to say, and I still kind of stand by it, that I want to see receiving chops first and then develop the blocking, particularly because of the college game. You don't see as much blocking now. But with that being said, to really make an impact, they need to be a capable blocker. So I'm weighing that a little bit more and hoping to see a little bit more of it in the college game. So yeah, he was my number 10 prospect. Where did you have him?
I have Jack Andrews at number 8. 2 years at Cal before his year at Texas. Well above average testing. I'm going to go through the receiving metrics, and I have this for everybody, by the way. So I lined up all the tight ends, and I got medians on everything. Actually, let me make sure I have the medians. I think I've got that up here. No, I didn't. I didn't record the medians anywhere. Okay, that's bad, but I can tell you what they were anyway. Yards per target was 7.7 at Texas. Yak per reception was 4.9, 5.3 career, 8.5 on the yards per target career. 8 out of 8.2, passer rating of 117.5, 110.5 for his career. And, a little bit bothersome because he is a bigger guy and he runs fairly quickly. Got a little bit of, juice in terms of elusiveness down the field. Missed tackles forced were only 0.09 per catch, 0.10 career. What is nice about him is he's had a very high volume of inline play. So 65.2% career. He's been a consistent plus run and pass blocker. And that's despite some length issues. He's got fairly short arms at 31 inches and just a 31 and an eighth is the number I have. And he's as tall as most linemen, so you wouldn't figure him to have any shorter arms than them, and yet he does. That was bad. He had 5 targets in that Citrus Bowl win over Michigan. 5 for 5 in catches and targets. That was good. If you look at the tape specifically, he presents very well when he's crossing. He's much too fast for most inside linebackers. That will change a little bit at the pro level, but there's not very many inside linebackers who can run 462, and he does have a little bit of ability to wiggle at the top of the route and force a misstep from an opposing player. Now, a zone defender, typically, if they're playing downhill, they're not going to have the same kind of trouble, but I don't think that's where Andrews will be used in the NFL. I think he'll be a crossing level 2, level 3, play action, seam runner when he does go out, and they'll use him in line as well for a good amount. What I do like, I think Andrews fits the Ravens' needs fairly well. Being an inline guy really makes more sense for what they don't have right now. You can cut Dylan Smythe or Durham Smythe right away if you have Andrews on your team. And he has big playability. You see a really good stiff arm in there from him from time to time. Protects the ball well after the catch. One thing you often see from tight ends is they're compulsive hurdlers. I didn't get that from watching Andrews tape, so that's a good thing. But a lot of tight ends. It's like they try it every single time, and it's a high risk turnover play. They get helicoptered, and and then there's just a very big risk that they're gonna get hit a second time and lose the football as they're trying to figure out how they brace themselves for impact. One thing about Andrews, he's not a big play guy. Longest career catch is only 28 yards. Really not much of a threat after the catch, and that shows up in the yak per reception numbers, which are typically higher in college. And what else is there to say? Very limited penalties career. Only 2 college penalties in 2,237 snaps. Now, why is that important? He's an inline guy, so he played 65.2% in line, and he's going to be on the edge of a run play a lot of times as they try and bounce to the outside, and he's not getting called for a bunch of holding calls. I don't actually have data that tells me exactly what those penalties were. Could have been 2 false starts for all I know. But the fact that he's only got 2 tells me he didn't have a big problem with holding calls. I think Gunnar Helm had a big problem with penalties, as I recall it, and generally infantile behavior on the field that was fairly well caught numerous times in terms of those flags. So anyway, bases are very well covered for the Ravens. Speed, agility to play in line, big playability, maybe there, but it would be the one thing that is lacking, at least in his college record. So I had him at number 8. Liked him as well.
Awesome.
All right, I guess we move on to my number 10 guy, and that's Josh Cuevas of Alabama. 2 years at Alabama, 1 at Washington, 2 at Cal Poly, which is an FCS program. And he'll be 23 in September, runs a 4.65 40, 6'3", 245. Is a little shorter and shorter arms as well, with under 31 inches at 30 and 5/8. With the exception of his 40 time, his testing is all pretty meh. His 3-cone time is 7:37. Excuse me. which is not good for a tight end. Receiving metrics, 8.2 yards per target. His yak per reception is at 6.6, though. That is quite good. A dot of 5.6. Passer rating throwing to him of 116.3 this last year, 108 career. And his missed tackles forced are good at 0.19 per reception, which is nice. So I take it with a grain of salt in terms of his career stuff, but he was pretty much every bit as good last year with Alabama. He's got 5 years and 170 career targets, which is a lot for the tight end class. Very few tight ends have more targets than that. But half of those came at Cal Poly in 2022 when he had a big year. So you got to kind of reduce the valuation there. Played 54% in line. That's a little bit less than some of the top guys in this, but still a guy who can block. I think he is a guy that you would depend on for a significant blocking role at the NFL level. He's only had one play over 30 yards in 2025. A 32-yard play was his longest. Had several longer in the past. But I think he is one of the most elusive and dangerous guys with the ball after the catch. And if you look at how Alabama used him, it's a lot of flat and screen routes. He's constantly on tape, just dragging across the middle of the field, and he's either a late release or he's a guy they're actually trying to use in a clear out mode on these shortcuts. So it kind of makes sense that he's not getting a lot of big. He doesn't have a big ADOT number at 5.6 for starters, but he has a fairly good yak number, and that's part of it. And it also would hold down his yards per target. So I wouldn't be too concerned about a 8.2, an unspectacular yards per target number like that. He was on the Mackey Award watch list, so that was good. And I'm not sure if the high percentage of inline play in his particular case with his length is going to translate to NFL success as a blocker. But I think he'll be more like Isaiah Likely, where he maybe is flexed out or maybe takes advantage of moving to level 2 and 3 and blocking smaller men. So the potential is out there to be an outstanding zone receiver for Jackson. I don't think there's any question about that. But anyway, number 10 on my list. I like him, not quite as much as Endries, but he's in some ways he's got some similarities for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a fair evaluation. I appreciate everything you said about Josh because he's my number 9, and so we have him in the similar area. And he was also the number 1 guy when I was watching him and then preparing for the show that I was like struggling to figure out exactly what I wanted to say about him, because what caught my eye right away is his sudden quickness and his ability to fight for yak. I really like that about him. I felt like he got to the third gear very quickly, and there's a couple really impressive movers, and that always catches my eye nicely. The other thing too, I think you kind of alluded to it. Another guy that can line up in an H-back type role. He is on the smaller side, but I did like his way of getting to level 2, the way he engages in his blocks. I think that, I think he could play a similar role to Endries on this team. I liked him a little bit more. I think it's just mostly the athleticism, but honestly, I can see the argument for either way. You know, with Endries, he's a little bit bigger, obviously, and maybe just a little bit more well-rounded. Well, I think Josh, like that his ability to fight for yak, I just think that and his quickness is just special. It's something that really caught my eye.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. Definitely a player I would be very happy with a day 3 selection of. And I think we're still talking about guys, by the way, for what it's worth. And maybe you can toss it in there. I have Endries as really being a 5th round guy for the Ravens. I think he'd be a value in that. I don't think you get him much later than that, but the Ravens have a couple picks in round 5, if I recall. And I have Cuevas as being a guy that they could get in round 5 on a pretty much a par value in round 5 or in round 6 as a true value. And he may be gone by then. And my position always is, if the player's gone by then he wasn't really a value at that point. And there's going to be all kinds of people who show up and they're advocates for any particular player. It doesn't have to be Josh Cuevas and say that, hey, you'll never get him that late. And let me tell you, he's much more important than that. And just, I'd say, look at how players drop in the draft in general. There's 45 guys every year that people are sure are going to be drafted in the first round, and there's only 32 every year that get drafted in the first round. That's the rules. So anyway, I think that he may be a guy who falls. He may be a guy who hangs around and still is there in round 6. So the Ravens go. So we're through. We just did your number 9, so it's my number 9, right?
Yeah, but I think real quick while we talk about where these guys project, I think the interesting thing that's going to happen with these tight ends is what's the market friction with all these players in a big lump, right? If you think to yourself, I don't mind, 10 through 15 that differently. I'm not saying that I do. I'm just saying that the NFL evaluator might, the Ravens might. Will this depreciate their value and they go later than you think? Potentially. I also fear that people just saw the Seahawks with like a guy like AJ Barner. They drafted Arroyo too. I mean, he didn't do anything for him this year, but it's a copycat league. Maybe more people are going to want tight ends. So I'm curious to see where these tight ends start to fall. My expectation is anyone in my back 5, 5 through 10, I expect to be a day 3 pick, maybe day 3 value. And then I think the top 5, I could see going day 2 or day 1. But I also could see them falling out,
Right.
particularly depending on if teams are just, there's plenty of them. We'll get one eventually and push it and push it and push it.
Okay, you're saying, so I have one guy who's above all the rest, but then I have 3 more guys who I'm not even 100% sure that they get drafted by day 2. Well, my number 2 tight end almost certainly gets drafted in day 2. Numbers 3 and 4, they might have to wait until round 4. And it's that deep a class. And you're saying your top 5 are all going by day 2, probably?
I'm not saying probably. I just think that if they went there, I wouldn't be surprised and I wouldn't judge the team for a reach. I think it's really just going to come down to how they, just want to value these players and look at the rest of the class. I think I'm going to be a little bit higher based on what you're saying on the top, 5 guys and their value to the team. And probably, frankly, a little lower number 1, but I can't wait to have that conversation. So yeah, I think all in all, I think it's gonna be an interesting class for sure. I always love doing tight ends with you, Ken. And this year, I'm just like, I can't quite put my finger on how it's going to fall and line up in the draft. I just think it's going to be really interesting because of the depth.
All right. Cornucopia for sure. And the next guy, my number 9 guy, is the guy I'm probably most excited about at the tight end position, other than the number 1 guy. Okay. So this would be the guy, if the Ravens got him, I could just see a million different ways to use him. And that's Riley Nowakowski of Indiana, who just won the national championship, obviously, with them, but don't have an age on the guy, and is the biggest single knock. He might have played JUCO, but he's probably either 24 or 25 based on the fact that he's had 4 college seasons, and there was some mention of some redshirting before that, I believe. So he's 24 or 25 in 2026. And if you have an actual age on him, I'd love to hear it.
I don't.
He's got no standout testing aside from his 40, which was 466. And he's got some size limitations that you normally don't ascribe to being a tight end at 6'2", 250. So that's not your typical tight end size, certainly, and 31.5 inches. But then you watch the guy on tape, and he is a big play in progress so regularly. And what he really reminds me of is he kind of is to tight ends what A.J. Brown is to wide receivers. It's just a big guy who's very difficult to bring down. You think about who the Ravens have brought in to run their offense and whatnot. First of all, they've brought in a new running backs coach, Faulkner from Pittsburgh, who is the tackle breaking guy of all guys. They've said they're phasing out Ricard. This guy is exactly a phase out player. Riley Nowakowski, this guy can line up, he can block, he can be in the backfield, he can move wherever you need him in the formation. He truly, changes how the defense has to look at it. Even though, he's not Patrick Ricard as a blocker, but he's a hell of a lot more as a receiver. Now let's go over his metrics for a minute. He is playing with Mendoza, of course, so that really helped him. But not as much as it helped other players who were actually getting the ball down the field. Yards per target, 10.8. That's for a tight end. 10.8 yards per target this last year. Yak per reception was 7.7. He does have a lot of red yards included in that, meaning yards that he gains behind the line of scrimmage to get back to the line of scrimmage, which are still in Yak. His A dot was only 5.3. Effectively, he's used a lot as an extension of the run game. The passer rating throwing to him was 130.0, and 117.6 for his career. Now, here's where the number is really interesting, because this is what absolutely jumps out of the tape at me. His missed tackles forced per reception were 0.31 and 0.22 for his entire career. So 5 years at Wisconsin. Yeah, this is where I got the age thing. He began as a walk-on at Wisconsin in 2020, and he didn't actually play his first games for Wisconsin until 2022. So he's been in college for 6 years.
Yep.
So he's an older guy. There's no doubt about it. He's extremely limited receiving history with only 62 targets, but he really blossomed in his final year with Mendoza and Mike Shanahan. 67.2% of his time was in line, so he fits the Ravens' need there. I think you can move him around a lot. He scored as a fullback in one of their games. It was versus Kennesaw State, but they obviously tried something different offensively to put him in the backfield, and he ran for a touchdown. And he has lots of big plays. So you think a guy like this, 250 pounds, built like a bowling ball, and that's not really true. He's really built like a extraordinarily muscular, like almost like it's going too far to say this, but the build is not too dissimilar from Derrick Henry. Speed is not at the same level, but he's 6'2", 250, and that's right around where Henry is. And he's a tackle breaking machine. So his big plays this year, he had plays of, let's get this right. Let me make sure I get over to his longs here. Whereas some of the other big players in this draft didn't have a lot of big plays. He had a 43, a 39, a 29, a 37, and a 31. So those are plays over 25 yards anyway for the year. And that's only on 36 total targets. It's just used as an extension of the running game. And he's just much more than that. Good blocker. And I just think he adds a dimension to the offense that's very different. I'm excited about him as a dynamic playmaker, and where you'd get him in the draft, which is probably the 5th or 6th round, be a very exciting addition at that point.
I'd agree with that. He's unranked for me. He's not in my top 10. But I see a lot of those qualities that you do. Smaller size, and then when you said Derrick Henry, I was like, yeah, that's not too, that's not incorrect. I think it's a very fair comp, which, is really saying something. A little bowling ball of dynamite. Definitely a good blocker. H-back potential, like you mentioned. Took some carries in college. Good finisher on blocks. The smaller build is interesting from a tight end perspective. I think you put it well that he would just be almost like a dynamic playmaker, and like a chess piece. I don't know if I would fully classify him as a tight end, but that's where he'd be on the roster, right? Like, it makes sense. It's similar to tight end Ricard, right? Like, he is a different kind of player.
Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's changing the game, Mood.com. They created an entirely line of functional gummies, 100% federally legal THC blends, discreetly delivered right to your doorstep. And here's the best part. You can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with the promo code RAVENS. Now, I've tried a bunch of their gummies myself. Each one's totally unique. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out right away. They help me unwind fast, leave me refreshed the next morning. The Epic Euphoria gummies, they're perfect for when your day just isn't going the way you want it to go. What makes Mood special is how they pair the THC with natural herbs and adaptogens. You won't find blends like this at any local shop. They've got gummies designed for focus, relaxation, clarity, even energy, all made from cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. No pesticides, no shortcuts, just high-quality weed you can trust. Plus, Mood backs everything with a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So head on over to Mood.com, check out their amazing selection, and don't forget to use the promo code RAVENS at checkout to save 20% off your first order.
More of a fullback type. I get why you had him there. I think he's exciting, and that's a great pickup.
All right, that's my number 9, and then we have your number 8. next.
All right, so this is my little darling. Curious if he's on your radar. I think I mentioned him though to you at the ball game. Carson Ryan out of BYU, 604, 250. Not invited to the combine, which is really disgraceful because of his mustache. He was at Utah before BYU. I believe he did a mission. Natural hands, very smooth hips. I think the thing I really liked about him is that no wasted movement. He caught the ball and got upfield very naturally. Tough to tackle. I like the fact that he got the ball. Now he played for BYU, right? But I think he got the ball in a lot of gotta have it moments. He was a heavily relied upon guy. I like the blocking. I think he's very willing, and I engaged well. Yeah, I like this guy. I think he's fun, and he's my dark horse.
Okay.
I always like to have a dark horse.
He did not make my top 19. So I did not look at him, and I appreciate you keying me in. Now I'm going to look at him before draft night, and we'll probably have him somewhere in the grays on day 3 when we're doing our interactive report. But I appreciate having a new name brought up. This happens probably once every other show that there's somebody I've never even looked at is mentioned as a player. But I do appreciate it, and I'll make sure I take a look at him. He's got a mustache, you say?
He sure does. It's a great mustache. It gets bushier as the season goes on. But I think the funny thing about Carson Ryan too is I was talking about him to Jason, Hollywood Films, one of our mutual friends, and he's like, "Yeah, I just put him on the board between you and Zaratniak and his crew." People were advocating that I gotta look at this guy, and he just made it to the board. So I think he's late to the people, late to the process for a lot of people, just because he wasn't invited to the combine, so he's a little under the radar. For how many tight ends, the most I think ever were invited to the combine this year, and they couldn't find room for Carson. So, anyways, I really like him. I think he's a fun player. I think the thing I like about him as well is he's just a well-rounded tight end, and I really value that going into this year.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. Everybody's got to have one of those. Jack Andrews is my number 8 guy. So we're down to your number 7 guy.
Okay. Lake McRee out of USC, 6'4", 243 pounds. Definitely a seam stretcher and dynamic. I like his ability to high point the ball and use his body to make the catches, block out. Kind of has that basketball player mindset. 5th year senior. Thought he was a good route runner. He set up defenders well. I like his blocking, and he definitely engaged down to down. Good in pass pro, inline, and as a move guy. He's definitely one of those. He, like I said at the top with the stream stretcher, he's definitely an athlete. I thought he could have some explosive plays for us, and this is starting where you start to get into more of the playmakers. I feel like in this group.
Well, definitely has some good receiving stats career, 120 passer rating throwing to him this year. And what's a career? Let's look at that. 105. Done a good job of not allowing interceptions, decent contested catch player, doesn't drop the football. ADOT's low, and his yak per reception is not particularly great. And then how is his overall year? Let's look at it here, 1,142 and 130. That's not bad at all. All right, another guy. You've gone 5-hole on me again.
Oh, you have him either?
No,
oh, wow.
He's not in my top 19.
Nice.
So it'd be interesting to see where some of the other services have him ranked, but he's definitely not in my top 19. Anyway, appreciate you bringing him on. That's another player I have to take a look at. So we'll have some honorable mentions, although your honorable mentions seem to have made the top 10 here. So that's great. And I apologize for not having much to
you're
respond
good. It happens. Right. I'm expecting you to do it to me.
Well, I better, because there's names on my list that I really like. So my number 7 guy is Sam Roush of Stanford.
Okay.
And let me get down to my Roush notes here. one of the things about doing this is I always have to be a couple of shows ahead at least minimum. And so I've looked at the cornerbacks and I've looked at the interior offensive linemen since, and sometimes I'll forget what I was thinking about the guy, but 6'6", 267, a 4.7 40, short arms, be 23 in September. He's got testing that's above average pretty much across the board. It's really just that measurables in terms of his arm length that's a problem. But really lousy yards per target number last year and for his career. They did not play with particularly great quarterbacks or particularly great teammates, period, at Stanford. So that's part of it. Decent yak per reception, not really a big tackle breaker, and terrible passer rating throwing to him at 69.0. He's a lot higher on some other lists. He had 177 career targets at Stanford. He was the primary focus of the 2025 offense. You don't really want to be that on a very, very bad team. Typically, that's like, think about what happened to Hollywood Brown or Mark Andrews when it's Tyler Huntley throwing him the football and how much their receiving statistics hurt because of it. You don't throw the ball down the field as much anymore because you don't have a quarterback with a lot of pocket awareness. You have to scheme the ball out of his hands, which means you make him a 5-yard, either of those guys, a 5-yard ADOT, which just restricts their value dramatically. So I think Roush had some of that going on. He plays 65.6% inline, which is probably one of the things I really like about him. Above average run and pass blocker, but he does have 12 penalties in 2,479 college snaps. So every 206, 207, roughly. He's only got 3 plays of 30-plus yards and 177 targets. Now, Nowakowski, for example, had 4 out of whatever it was, 37 or something, or 36 last year. So, definitely not the same there. He had a 69-yard play, which against Boston College, and you can see that the BC safety just took a terrible angle on the play to allow it. And that it might be in the first game of the season because it was a big yak play, I recall. No, that's not the play I'm thinking of. Anyway, it was against Boston College. So it might have been actually in a previous. No, I'm looking at Lake McCree. Never mind. I'm just looking at the wrong thing. I know I've got this. I know I've got this play correct. It was 18 plus 51 for a touchdown, where the BC safety took a really bad angle. He had a 50-yard play versus Pittsburgh. That was on an extended play where he found space behind the defense, down the right sideline. That was a good one. A lot of underneath throws that both boosted his yak, reduced his ADOT, and probably reduced his yards per target. All 3 of those things. And you say, well, how could it increase his yak and reduce his yards per target? The answer is red yards. So if you throw the ball to somebody 4 or 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, the first 4 or 5 yards they have is yak, and only gets them to 0 yards per target on those plays. So that's the reason why. In fact, there are players, Ray Rice, in one of his years with the Ravens, who had more yak than receiving yards in a year. It's like 735 to 733 or something in one of his big all-purpose years. Real good red zone target, Roush is, with his size. Stanford went just 13 and 34 in his 4 seasons, so he's played with really bad players. He needs to develop into a better blocker at the NFL level. And I think if you look at what he could be, the upside is a Charlie Kolar and his NFL value, because he's already been the focal point of an offense like Kolar was at Iowa State. And he'll certainly be a primary role will be on special teams and as a move and blocking inline guy. Swiss Army knife, move him around a little bit, but he's mostly in line. Would Roush be? So anyway, I had him at number 7 largely because of the Kolar similarities I saw and the opportunity to replace him.
Nice, that's fair. He was my number 11, so he just barely made it out of our list here. Played rugby growing up. Did a good 3-cone for his size, like you mentioned. Kind of the relative athletics score of Roush, given his size, is pretty good. I think he had like a 112 speed score. A lot of drops though. Don't like to see that. You mentioned the penalties. I didn't know about that. I think his athleticism aids him in his run and pass blocking. I think he's one of the best blocking tight ends in this class. However, that athleticism really doesn't wow you when it comes to, I guess, his dynamic nature after the catch. I know he had some of those big plays, but I just feel like there's a lot more dangerous athletes in this class comparatively.
I would agree. I think the quarterbacks that threw him the football were kind of dangerous to Stanford's success also. So he had 7 interceptions career in balls thrown to him.
Mm.
And what that says is you're probably a number one target who's getting overused and has lower value marginal targets. And we've seen that from Mark Andrews at times in the past as his year over year quarterback rating throwing to him was dropping during the years where Lamar was injured in the second half. And even in 21 where Lamar, really had some of his first bad stretches of playing football. He had a bunch of interceptions throwing to Andrews that were largely because Andrews was his bailout target at the end, and so he looks for him when all else fails. That's a good way to fail.
Yeah, and just to wrap it up, I thought he was clean in pass protection. Definitely drives guys in the run blocking game. Wouldn't be disappointed at all if we draft him on day 3. So yeah, I think, and also like if you just scout the helmet, right? Stanford tight end, it's they usually work out decently.
All right, make sure I'm in the right place here. Okay, let's go one more. Let's do your number 6 since we already have not a lot of overlap in our groups, and then we'll maybe name some honorable mention guys, and then we'll go to the top 5 at the beginning of the next show.
All right. For me, number 6 is Joe Royer, Cincinnati, 605, 247. Definitely has some elite speed. It was a focal point of his offense. He's able to use that speed to create yak. I think his move blocking is his best blocking attribute. Might struggle with ends at the next level. Let's see. Did you have him in your list?
Yes, he's
Okay.
number 12, not in my top 10, but he's number 12. So he is on my honorable mention group. Do you want me to talk about receiving metrics or anything? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Fantastic yards per target last year of 12.6. A lot of it was yak, so that's just fine. However you get it. Passer rating throwing him the football, 158.3. That is perfect, my friend. Perfect passer rating throwing him the football.
I didn't know that. That's impressive.
Did not have a ton of missed tackles forced. He's average, 0.14, 0.17 career. He did not get used when he was at Ohio State for 21 to 23. He spent 3 years there, but since then, the last 2 years at Cincinnati, he's had 108 targets, 45.5% inline. So he's much more of a flex guy. That's near the bottom. He's near the bottom of run blockers as PFF scored it. One thing, it's very hard to score. Very, very difficult to score run blocking effectively for a tight end without relying on some metric like PFF. Now, the problem is this. If you look at highlights, you see all their good run blocks and none of the bad ones. If you look at individual games, you have to watch a lot of individual games to get any kind of sample size that's large enough for tight end run blocking to be really significant. But there are people out there who are, want to be trait spaced is the term that's used. They will over project from minimal data what they think they have seen. And that's the other side of this that could be very bothersome. So you have to, at some point, you have to go to a hit spirit bet mechanic and somebody who's been scoring it regularly. And I do trust PFF to largely get that right, particularly when you're dealing with a median for the group as a whole. And so Royer is a guy that is a 45.5% inline guy and not a particularly good run blocker. I think that he is a guy. If you look at him, if you look at his size, you look at the way he moves, he is a guy that they could train up to be an Isaiah Likely-like blocker, where he's specifically lined up to take on level 2 and level 3 players in the run game. And the Ravens' run game has always had elements of that are you make use of a marginal blocking talent, and all of a sudden he looks good, whether it's a wide receiver or a tight end or those are the primary 2 categories it would be in, or maybe even another running back, certainly a fullback. But Royer is a guy, and I wouldn't have any objection at all. I think he's a 5th or 6th round guy for the Ravens. I think he's probably the second guy taken if they took a tight end. If they took him as the first, I don't know if I'd be that excited in terms of, I think they want to get one of the top 10 guys, at least as I have them scored, as the first guy they take.
Awesome. Yeah, he broke Travis Kelce's record, which is kind of cool, at Cincinnati. Definitely a fun player. And he made your top 12, so that's not too bad. Who did you have at number 6? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Again, the bingo card hits again. So anyway, I'm not going to go to number 6. I think we'll hold it for the beginning of the next show.
Okay.
But I thought we could do a few more honorable mentions and guys who just didn't quite make it. And you don't have to name everybody and give away all the goodies from the next show either. But who did you have the highest ranked guy that we haven't talked about yet on your list?
Marlon Klein from Michigan. He plays Loveland. Nice athleticism, which definitely I think translates to his receiving and blocking. Sticky on his blocks, looks for work, and I thought he had nice hands away from the body. It's a projection. Didn't really see it on the film, but H-back potential.
I had him as number 18 on my list, so 7th round pick or undrafted. And I'd still be okay having him if he's the second tight end the Ravens get, and that's absolutely fine. Didn't have a really quality run blocking resume. Didn't have any pressure events as PFF. PFF doesn't score partials, so you don't really get a great notion of it from that. Played 53.8% of his time in line. Not a great contested catch player, despite having perfectly good size and speed and I mean 6'6" and 32 3/8 inch arms. So there's nothing wrong with that. And runs a 4.61 40. So that's all good. But here's one of the kisses of death. All of that, he's got one career missed tackle forced. So when you see him, he generally is a dragger. He's trying to drag people for an extra yard and a half, but he's not particularly elusive in the open field or dangerous, or he has some mega stiff arm that he's going to throw at people. He's pretty much a catch and go down guy. All right, I'll take one. Maybe we'll name about 3 guys here total. We won't go too deep into this. My number 11 guy was Eli Raridon of Notre Dame, a guy we've certainly seen play a lot. He might even be on your list, which is a danger for me naming him now. He didn't.
No, he's number 14.
14. Okay. Yeah. You can start while I go find my notes here.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I was expecting the Notre Dame tight end to show up for you guys. At least we'll talk about him. He exists. He had 2 knee injuries to start his college career. Was productive afterwards. I thought the no touchdowns this year was a little bit concerning, production concerns. But yeah, there's definitely some athleticism there. I thought, though, he had no other gear. Lots of players caught up to him in the open field, which I don't love to see. I just think he wasn't plus enough in blocking for me to deal with the lack of top end speed.
Yeah, I mean, it is didn't really have a ton of targets either at Notre Dame for a guy who is mostly a flex tight end. He's 46.6% in line. Roughly 40th percentile if you go by PFF, is both a pass and run blocker. I did like his catch radius. He has some ability to catch the ball going backwards and forwards. And generally speaking, when you're looking at catch radius, what will really show up on tape is the ability to reach back for the ball, or the ability to have a high vertical catch radius where you're extending and you have good leaping ability. And oftentimes that comes with the fearlessness. So Clarence Moore had tremendous vertical ability to get up, at the old Ravens receiver who caught 2 touchdown passes in the 2004 game at the Meadowlands. But he had alligator arms out the wazoo that he really was afraid of contact. And so Raridon, I think you see more of that, less fear, good box out player, which makes him a good contested catch player. So there were things to like about him. And again, in a normal year, the number 11 tight end might be a guy I'm not even that excited to get. I'd be very excited if the Ravens got Eli Raridon. He's a 5th, 6th round player, and that's probably where the Ravens would have to draft him if they want to get him.
One more for me.
One more. Yeah.
Oscar Delp out of Georgia, 6'5", 245. Was hiding behind Brock Bowers for a while, but once he left, he didn't really step up in the production game. Unfortunately, he had a hairline fracture in his foot, so he wasn't able to participate at the combine. But he did do his best, at the pro day, and had a good showing there, it seemed. Definitely a good blocker. I think Georgia believed that he was more valuable to them as a blocker than as a pass catcher. Kind of see that in this film and the way he was utilized. Really limited route tree, which I didn't like to see. Kind of short arm some of the catches. Those were just a few red flags on his profile. Honestly, even at 13, like I don't know if I would love to see him just because of the. It's one of those funny things. Like I think he's a better overall football player, but if the Ravens selected RJ Maryland, who was deeper on my list, he's just a natural receiver, late hands, like dynamo. Just seems like a natural football player and playmaker. Like I would be a little bit more excited about him, even though I had him ranked lower.
All right, fair enough. Del, had a decent career at Georgia, certainly, and he is below Max Bredesen on my list, if that gives you any idea of just how much I'm not really high on him. 133.9 no rating throwing to him for his career. Never had an interception thrown his way on 94 career targets. So it's not like there's nothing to like. I just don't think he's anything really special as a receiver. I think mostly I would probably call him a system tight end at Georgia, a guy who really benefited from the other players around him and how good they were. So his targets ended up being of higher quality and of lower defensive assignment value than some of the other studs. That shows up in like yards per route run. He never had a big yards per route run number. It's 1.23 career. One way to look at a yards per route run number is to think about how many eligible receivers you have per play, 5, and then multiply your 1.23 times 5 is 6.15. You would not be happy with that for your quarterback as a yards per attempt number. So you really wouldn't, you can't be too thrilled about a guy like that in terms of what he brings you. So always been a secondary receiving option, probably benefited from that at Georgia. And again, 7th round, no problem. In terms of having him, really earlier than that, he's there for somebody else to take, because I think there's a lot of other guys on day 3 I'd rather have.
Awesome.
All right. I know a guy who a lot of people otherwise have higher is Dallin Bentley of Utah, because he's been a fairly high volume player, but he played JUCO at Snow College, then went to Utah, and I don't believe I have an age on him. I don't 25. Have an age. He's 25. Okay. Wow. I didn't know that. That I would have him lower if I'd known that. So my notation is no age, probably 23 in 2025, but you have an actual birth date that goes with that.
I heard he was 25 from what's his name? Building the Beast guy. I'm blanking on his name now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the Beast Guide usually has more of those.
It's not out yet, but it always has a birthday.
Okay.
Yeah, he's basically a CIA,
Yeah. It's a very, very valuable thing, because agents are going out there and they're wiping this crap off for players. And he has been a guy who's broken tackles fairly regularly. He's got a .21 missed tackle rate in 25, which matches basically his career number. Decent passer rating, throwing the ball at 109.5. He made only 4 of 15 contested catches, and that's despite being really good size. I mean, he's 6'4", 253, but he also has 33 and an 1/8-inch arms. Did 24 bench reps, ran 462. I mean, that's a guy you would expect to do a little bit better there. Utah was very good, though, and he was a focal point of their offense. Does find space well in zone. He's a valuable pass catcher. There's just a lot of guys who can make a play with the football in this class, and I don't really believe that Dallin Bentley's at the top of that list. Anyway, that's where I had him.
Yeah, so. same area for me with Eli and Oscar. So, yep.
All right, so you had him outside of your top 10 anyway.
I did. Yeah.
All right, Alec. Always great talking football with you. We had the pleasure of being at opening day today with you. So if you're there for the Orioles, this will be out on Friday. You'll hopefully be listening to this, and we'll just still be in the afterglow of that first Orioles win, and wondering just how many of these remaining 161 games are they going to be able to take. But I thought, and a good day for the Orioles on the first day. Really showed up with a fine pitching performance, even though Rogers pitched himself out of trouble a few times.
Yeah, I feel like it's a game they wouldn't have won last year. Like that's the big thing I thought is there wasn't much offensive production for a while there. They finally got on the reliever, just a few runs, but they were able to be, that double play that they turned to limit, runs there. I think, yeah, I overall, I was really happy to see that game. I'm hoping to see more games that we win where we only score 2 or 3 runs, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing I think that was really missing from the team last year. They just, even when they get a good pitching performance, sometimes they just wouldn't score. And this time they did just enough. So definitely excited.
Big day for Kobe Mayo at the plate. I thought in the plate and at the field, but obviously turned 2 double plays, which was great, including a really nice one that he kind of went to the ground to his left to snag the ball and start a very quick double play. But he was one of the only guys who made solid contact off Logan in the first 6 innings of the game. I mean, they had one hit that whole time, and he blasted 2 foul balls on consecutive pitches down the left field line. So I thought that I'm bullish on what Mayo can provide prior to Westberg and Holiday's return. I guess mostly Westberg will take over at third base. So it'll be when Westberg returns, that's when Mayo presumably will lose his job. Maybe.
I really hope he gets back. I got his jersey. He's one of my favorite players on the team, but I don't know, man. That elbow just seems like a ticking time bomb. So we'll see.
Yeah, but it just sucks. You go through these things where it's your pitchers every year, but it's the hitters too, and everybody's missing time. And one of the things I've become dispirited with about football is how much every season comes down to injuries. And I love the game, but it's just there's just too high a luck factor involved in injuries that determines has a huge determinant in every season. So anyway, frustrating. All right. Well, tell us where people can talk football with you online.
Sure. You can find me at Pulianas.com. I'll definitely share this show on the website when it's out. You can also find me on X and Blue Sky and Threads and all the good places.
All right. Alec, thanks a lot for coming on. Other folks out there, if you have a draft strategy show you'd like to do, hit me up. And DMs are always open on Twitter. You want to contact me on Reddit, the same thing is possible. I'll get back to you very quickly, particularly if you have a good idea for a show. I want to mix in some of these with some of these 2-part draft shows that tend to be very, very lengthy and hopefully at the depth that people enjoy. And I hope you also join us for draft night. And I'm sure Alec is going to be on for at least some part of it. At least I hope so. And we'll have a lot of panelists talking about the thing. We'll be working on an interactive spreadsheet. And whether you're a panelist or a person who's watching, you'll have a chance to contribute to that. And that's a lot of the fun of the show we have. Alec, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, Ken.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.